It is 12:57 a.m. on Wednesday, March 5th. I feel like I keep saying this recently, but I'm going to keep it short because I have 2 midterms in the next 2 days, and these are important tests because they take up the majority of the grades in the classes. And I just kind of want to note on one thing, is that the boarding school that I went to was very academically focused, and it was very rigorous and prepared me a lot more than a normal high school would. And it may sound like I'm saying a generalization, but I'm not. The boarding school that I went to is probably, I don't want to sound like I'm being arrogant when I say stuff like this, but like one of the best in the country academically. So I was prepared a lot for the college atmosphere. Going to boarding school, I'm used to staying away. I'm used to studying and doing things on my own. I'm a lot more self-sufficient than a normal high schooler than going into college. Trust me, I know that because, my God, some of these people are absolute bricks when it comes to living by themselves. And some people are juniors and still don't know how to do it. But I got a lot more used to doing all these things. But even so, being in a very academically rigorous area, tests I never studied for. Like, I studied for them, but I didn't study for them as much as I do when I'm here and having a midterm. Like, I would maybe do the day of. At lunch, I would go over the stuff and study, and that was it. If I had a vocab quiz, study the vocab the hour before. So, and I did pretty well. Even in just normal high school, I did no studying whatsoever. There wasn't a thing for me. And I did pretty well. I got into a very prestigious college as a result of that. But as I entered, I took multivariable calculus and linear algebra, or multivariable calculus and series. And so far, that's still been the hardest math class that I've taken, even though I've taken 2 more, or in the second one this semester. But it's like I have to study more. It's less of the fact that I have to just remind myself of the material. It is more now that I have to actually go through the stuff that I've learned again and force it into my brain. It's much less that you learn everything you need to learn while in the classroom, and more so you are given guidance of what to do in the classroom, and you're expected to figure all that out when you're at home and studying. And that's a big shift, mostly because of, like I said, how tests work. And it's a lot more demanding. So when I get to these situations and there's like things like midterm weeks, like I have 2 midterms here, in 2 weeks I have two more midterms, and they're not really frequent except for the language one, but that's a little bit easier to study for because it's less material. But it's just a lot more studying, a lot more work, and it's just a lot more than people will think when coming into college. And I always got in this weird situation where it's like I had to do a lot more in math to be able to maintain a very good grade. But in a writing class that you have to take as a requirement for your first year at this college, I actually had to take a step down from my writing style because the teacher was refusing my essays. And I had a very good English teacher for most of my years at my boarding school. She was probably the smartest English professor I've ever had. She had a doctorate in literature. She talked about her essay. It was something about Frankenstein and something. It was great. But I read a lot of really old historic books and very convoluted things. Like, I remember talking to my dad and be like, oh yeah, I'm reading Beloved. And he's like, Beloved? I read that in my first semester of college, and I was reading it in 11th grade. So it's like, and I got used to her style of writing, which is a lot more complex than what the teacher wanted here. So I had to actually dumb that down a little bit to get it so that, to get back to the topic sentences every single paragraph. The thesis is not she gave us an outline for the thesis. And it goes, you go observation, inference, significance. And that's your thesis statement. And that's the most important thing in your essay. And it wasn't that, and it was structured so differently, I had to take a step back. And then the next semester, I took another class where we were given free reign over our essays. And my God, some of my favorite essays that I've written, because I was just streamlining out of my mind about topics that I was interested in. But that also is a really big change for me specifically. But I also have some of my mom's friends work at another college, and most of the students there do not come from an academically rigorous high school, boarding school, and more come from a local setting. And she was talking to my mom about how these students don't know how to write an essay. And I feel like it's really odd for me to always think about college and thinking about what is hard for me, what is easy for me, when I have a completely different experience than the average high schooler coming into college. And I always find it really funny that for me, I got so much more advanced in a analytical setting, and I would even argue a critical thinking kind of argumentative setting, because it's how a lot of the classes were structured. But in math, I'm pretty much just average for my skill level, even though my skill level may be a year and a year and a half ahead of most people. And so it's always a really weird thing to think about. And I always get, I talk to a lot of people who come from my background at this school, but then I'll talk to my friends who are out at different colleges, or the larger colleges, like one of my friends in the aerospace section of a college, very, very good aerospace engineering portion, but the normal college is technically a state college and or state university, I would say. And I don't know, it's really weird thinking about this and how things, one of my friends is from the South, and when I was saying I go to this college, his friends were like, I have no idea what that college is, I've never heard of it before, even though where I'm from, in the social circles and environments that I interact with, this is a very well-known school. And so it's really, I don't know, it's kind of odd coming from this and hearing the differences in experience and how I have come from a very good, I've come from a background that has made me prepared for everything that a college would need, yet I still needed to work so much more, specifically just on math. And I thought that was just interesting that there's that change. And I know this feels weird to talk about because it really does make me feel like I'm bragging, being very pretentious and woohoo, look at me. But, I mean, who cares? Nobody's really watching these. And again, this is all just for me to have things that have been stuck in my mind to be put out, said somewhere. But yeah. God, I hate saying my boarding school, because that is the epitome of people that I dislike, where they've made their whole personalities based on their accolades and achievements and things that I've gone to. And I don't think I take for granted the fact that I did go to a very, very, very good boarding school. When we would talk about the boarding school rankings or the high school rankings, the school that I went to was consistently at the top of the list for both of those. And I don't take it, I don't see it as what it is because I went to it, and I don't understand the other perspectives that people come from because, again, I went to that institution. And so it's just, it's difficult for me to understand sometimes the other positions that people come from, because I come from a very privileged background when it comes to that academic setting. But even so, math really does take it out of me.